beavers and the complications therein. So welcome, Jacob.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay? Good? Okay. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for coming. It's great to see a room full of people excited about birds and animals. So appreciate y'all having me tonight. So yeah, my name's Jacob LeVitus. I'm a habitat biologist with WDFW. And just a little bit about myself before I get into the beavers. After I graduated from college, I worked in the Blackfeet Nation in Montana, building beaver dam analogs with community college students and doing non-lethal beaver management work. So I kind of cut my teeth doing that, and then moved to Spokane and worked in regenerative landscaping for a couple years, getting rid of people's lawns and putting in native plants. And about a year ago, I got a job with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I've been there ever since. So what is a habitat biologist? Let me close that. Okay. Most of what I do is issuing permits on hydraulic projects or any kind of construction or restoration project in or around waters of the state that are fish bearing. And what I do with this permit is make sure that any impacts to fish habitat are reduced, minimized, or avoided. And if they can't be avoided, they're offset in some type of mitigation. I also help review forestry projects to make sure they're done sustainably, and help the different jurisdictions in Eastern Washington ensure that their long-term land use projects are done with wildlife habitat in mind. So every day looks a little different for me. I also do a lot of work with fish passage, so making sure we don't have culverts that look like this, so our fish can migrate up and downstream. But today we're really going to focus on the North American beaver, or Castor canadensis. So really it's a tale of resilience. So just kind of a table of contents for the discussion we're going to have today. I'm going to go over the beaver biology, the historical impacts of the fur trade, some beaver behaviors, how they help our ecosystems, and then how we can better coexist with them. So when you think of beavers, what do you think of? Maybe you think of dams or chewing trees. Maybe you went and saw this movie. Has anyone seen Hoppers yet? Highly recommend. It's great. Maybe you think of the cute little babies, or the fur trade, lodges, Oregon State, or, oh yeah, the gas station in Texas. So some fun facts. There are 2 species of beaver, North American and Eurasian. They're found in every state but Hawaii, all over Canada, and in parts of Mexico. They're the 2nd largest rodent in the world after the capybara, which is found in South America. They're about the size of a medium-sized dog. So they're a lot bigger than people realize, because normally when you see them, they're swimming, so you just see their heads poking up. But they're pretty big. And one really interesting fact is that they have really orange teeth, and that's because they're fortified with iron. That's what helps them cut trees down so easily. So if I cut a tree down with my teeth, it probably wouldn't go very well. But yeah, and their teeth never stop growing, so they have to continue to chew. They have to continue to eat and build so that their teeth don't grow back into their brains, which is kind of crazy to think of. Some more facts about the beaver. They actually have a second eyelid that is clear, and that helps them see underwater when they're swimming. So they basically have a free pair of goggles. They can hold their breath for up to 15 minutes underwater. They are the second most influential animal in the world after just us. They really impact their environment. They mate for life, and their kids stick around for a few years, which not every animal does that. And they have really strong tails that they can use to slap the water. I don't know if anyone's ever heard that, but sounds kind of like a gunshot. If there's a bear or a human or something that they don't like, they'll slap the water and let their family know, and they can go into the lodge and they're safe there. Probably the most consequential beaver fact. So if you think of a square centimeter, so like the size of a shirt button, like a pretty small size, a human has about 100 hairs per square centimeter. A dog has about 2,000 to 5,000. And I know I went ahead and showed you the number on accident, but a beaver has 100,000. So we have 100. So unfortunately for the beaver, this really dense fur is also really warm and waterproof. And so it became a very fashionable commodity over in Europe, in France mostly. And their pelts were turned into different styles of hats. Here are some of them, some different styles. And the more complicated the hat, the more expensive typically is how it worked. So they were, quite a upper class kind of thing that people really like to have. But unfortunately for the beaver, the demand out exceeded the supply, and they nearly trapped all of them. So there really weren't many left. And so when the settlers arrived here in the Americas, they found wetlands and streams and rivers that were just teeming with beavers. They were everywhere, pretty much in every single waterway. Estimates say that it was about 100 to 400 million beavers in North America at its peak before European colonization, and there were about 1 billion dams throughout the country or the continent. So this kind of set off alarms for people coming over from Europe, because now all of a sudden there was a new supply of pelts. And so this actually played a huge role in manifest destiny and westward expansion. So from 1630 to 1640, nearly 1 million beavers were removed from the Hudson River and western New York. And trading companies like the Hudson Bay Trading Company established trading networks that went all the way across the country pretty much. Explorers like I think Bridger and Lewis and Clark were mostly just looking for beaver pelts, which is something a lot of people didn't realize. And this led to the displacement of native peoples and significant ecological change. So here are a few different historical events that can everyone read that? I know it's kind of small. I'm not going to read all of them, but this kind of just shows how influential beavers were in our geopolitical history, kind of dating all the way back to the 1700s. And most recently in the state of Washington, we realized the benefit of beaver and put in a law that fined people $50 to $100 for trapping. And in 1945, we passed an act to control the population. So as a result of the fur trade, our 100 to 400 million were reduced to 100,000. And this had a lot of really negative impacts on our streams, our wetlands, our biodiversity. And it was just an environmental catastrophe. And luckily for the beavers, in the 1840s, European fashion trends switched from beaver fur to silk. So that is really what saved the beaver, was French people deciding they didn't like these hats anymore. And today the population's rebounded about 10% to about 10 to 15 million. So far from the original, which I don't think we'll ever get to, but at least they're making a comeback. So beavers live in homes called lodges. They're pretty interesting. They have underwater tunnels that are really small, inaccessible to predators. Wolves, bears, coyotes can't get in them. They're built using sticks, mud, and rocks, and their walls can be 4 to 8 inches thick. So they're not drywall constructors. They're more of like plaster of like a 1900 house, really well insulated. So the temperature won't drop below freezing even in the dead of winter. So they're able to have water and stay warm. They also have different rooms. There's an eating chamber, a nesting chamber. They have a mud room where they like to dry off and kind of, not track water into the lodge like we do. And they'll also invite their friends in. So there's lots of videos on YouTube of beavers and muskrats hanging out in the lodge together, and the beaver will even feed the muskrats, and the muskrats will use the beavers' trails that they excavate. So they kind of cohabitate. I think the muskrat is leeching off the beaver a little bit. The beaver's doing all the work, but they seem to get along and be friends, so it's okay. They're also good builders. So this picture on top, actually both of these pictures are the same stream, just different stretches. The top stretch is where there's a beaver dam. You can see the dam. It's a pretty big one. It goes all the way across here. And then the bottom picture, there's no dam. So you can see how much water they're holding back. The reason why they like to build dams is because they're not great on land. So beavers are semi-aquatic rodents. They live in land and water, but they're kind of clunky and awkward on land. So they're much better swimmers than they are walkers. So they like to have their lodge kind of in the middle of a pond so that the predators can't get to them. So really all they're trying to do is keep their lodge safe. But while they do that, they're creating habitat for fish, wildlife, birds, and all kinds of species benefit from them. Here on the left is the world's largest beaver dam. It's in Wood Buffalo National Park in Alberta, very remote place. And it's half a mile long, and it can actually be seen from space. And I don't know how old it is, probably a million years or something. So they're really good building, and helping out the ecosystem has given them the nickname ecosystem engineers. So this kind of shows the process of what happens when a beaver dam gets built in a system. So you can see here in picture A, there's not a lot of vegetation. Most of the trees here are upland species. There's not really any habitat for aquatic birds or moose or anything like that. Also, the banks are incised, which basically means that they are, instead of being like this, gradual and giving the water an opportunity to flow out into the floodplain during a flood, it's a confined channel that is kind of like a water slide. The water can't go anywhere, and so it results in really bad floods downstream since the water can't dissipate. It also contributes to really bad erosion and sedimentation, which is bad for fish. They don't like that kind of water. And yeah, so that can be caused by a variety of things, such as dredging, overgrazing, cattle being in the streams, or just not having beavers around. We've also historically straightened a lot of channels, and that's led to increased incision. So here in picture 2, you can see the stream starting to go around the dam, and while it does that, it deposits sediment. It kind of hits the bank and drops some of that sediment load, which builds the channel, the stream bed up from the bottom, eventually allowing these wetland aquatic riparian plants to come in and get reestablished, which slows the water more animals come in, more beavers come in, and eventually you've got a whole ecosystem that's created by the beavers, and it's very beneficial for everyone. So the water table rises, and that allows water to stay in the system longer and not dry out by the fall. Unfortunately, there are some areas where beavers can't be supported either because of human infrastructure or there's just not enough food or habitat. So one really popular method people have been implementing is called beaver mimicry, where people build beaver dam analogs or BDAs. They're very low tech, they're easy to build. You use all natural materials, so it goes back to the earth when it's done. And it does pretty much what a beaver does, but not as well. They're also really cost effective since it's just local materials and there's not a lot of engineering that is required. So here are a couple BDAs I helped build in the Blackfeet Nation in Montana. On the left, you can really see how much sediment is being trapped here. And over time, this sediment will drop down to the stream bed and build it back up from the bottom up, which will reactivate these floodplains. We planted willows along the banks, so hopefully this leads to increased habitat. And then over here, this the BDAs right here, the landowners run a lot of cattle, and the cows kind of destroyed this bank, leading to a lot of incision. And it was pretty cool. This was actually the day we built it. All of this sediment right here, pooling exactly where we wanted it to. So over time, maybe 5 or 10 years, the stream bed will be built up by a foot, or I'm not sure exactly how much, but over time, that channel will be reconnected to its floodplain. So we used sledgehammers. Yeah, it was not fun, especially in cobbly, rocky streams. Oh, the question was, how do we pound in the posts? So an auger wouldn't work, but a lot of the crews now, the Lands Council and Spokane Conservation District, they use a hydraulic post pounder. And they have it rigged up so that and this is one of the provisions in our permits that we issue for that project, they can't have anything gas powered in the water. And so the actual engine component is like way up here, and there's like a hydraulic hose that allows them to use the post pounder in the water, so we don't have to worry about any gas or anything spilling. But they're pretty high tech, and they can do a lot of those posts in a day. Beavers have also been known to help fight wildfire. There are some pretty cool studies that have come out. One's called Smokey the Beaver that just shows how much areas with beavers have served as refuge for wildlife in megafires. And this is due to the extensive groundwater spread that deepens the water table and helps keep those plants wet and saturated even in a fire. So picture A, this is from a fire in California. The dam is right here, and this was all green before the fire. The only green left is right by the beaver dam on both sides. This tributary here had no beaver dams and burned all the way through. This is a before and after. So the beaver dam's right here. After the fire, you can see the only green left is right by the beaver pond. So people are using BDAs for all kinds of things, not just water storage and habitat, but also for wildlife refuge and fires. Unfortunately, sometimes beavers, they just do what they know how to do, and that can cause problems and challenges for humans. So sometimes they'll cut down trees or plug a culvert or dam up a farm field. So there are a few mitigation measures that people implement to help manage the beaver behavior. So for chewing down trees, since beavers need to eat, there are ways, like I said, to help protect trees, because some trees have monetary or sentimental value. So if there's a cottonwood tree that your kid loves to climb in and it's a special tree to your family, or if you have an apple orchard right by the river, you can wrap or fence those specific trees while leaving some food for the beavers. So we don't recommend wrapping every single tree, but this has been proven effective. So when you're wrapping trees, it's very important to not use chicken wire. They're 60 to 70 pound animals and they'll just push it down like it's nothing. So you want to get something that's rated and a little bit more sturdy. North 40 has great fencing, and if you tell them you're trying to wrap trees for beavers, they'll probably point you to the right 4-foot fencing. It's important to give those trees some room to grow. So you don't want to wrap them so tight that you're just going right around the bark. You want to give them a few inches on either side, and check on them every few years to make sure the trees aren't girdling themselves, which is when they grow into that metal, they'll just keep growing. They'll grow through the cage, but it will damage the tree. And in some cases where there's a cluster of trees that you want to protect, you can basically fence them in. So you take 4 T-posts or however many T-posts you need, and just fence around the whole thing. And that can save you time and material. People have also tried mixing sand with paint. Beavers don't like the way sand feels on their teeth. It's kind of a sensory thing for them. But it's had mixed reviews, so I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe some people have had success, but the fencing seems to be the consensus of the best method there. Beavers can also cause damage to crops, infrastructure, and homes. So here, this is a house in Browning, Montana. The water was pretty much up to the house, so we had to come in and put in some flow devices, which I'll get into. And then here's a street in Massachusetts that is at threat to wash away. So Oh, Washington. Did I say Massachusetts? I thought that said Ma. That's Wa. Perfect. Yeah, this is a local creek. Um, so there's two different flow devices that can be used. So for just a standard beaver dam that's causing flooding, there's a device called a pond leveler. And that is basically running a corrugated pipe through the dam. So you notch the dam, you run the pipe through at your desired water level, whatever keeps the house from flooding. And then on the upstream end, you build a cage and you cage around the pipe, the intake of the pipe. And the way beavers' minds work, they'll hear the water here and they'll keep building over the pipe, but the water will keep flowing through and then they'll get frustrated and move on. So that's been pretty effective. And then for culverts, there's a device called a beaver deceiver. I didn't make that up. That's actually what it's called. And that is where you build a fence around the culvert. And I've mostly done them in trapezoids, kind of going out away from the culvert. And then, sorry, this mouse is very sensitive. And the way beavers think, they'll try to dam the front, but they won't dam the sides. So water can still come through and it won't flood this road up here. It won't flood Mill Creek, Washington. So here's a little bit of information about how to build a pond leveler. So you build your cage, you get your pipe. Some people have used 2 pipes if you need to move a lot of water, or just a really big pipe. And then you notch the dam and run the pipe through. So here's the pipe, and then it goes all the way. This isn't my picture, but I think the water is going from right to left. So this is the outflow, and this is the intake up here. So there's probably a cage up here. Another method of beaver management is translocation. That can be kind of a good last resort if nothing else is effective. There are lots of limiting factors. Beavers are known to carry a variety of diseases. Giardia is the main one, beaver fever. And so we won't allow beavers to be translocated to a different watershed. So if you catch one in Mill Creek, it has to stay in Mill Creek. They also have to be housed in one of these facilities for, I think, 2 weeks to a month, so they can be tested for genetics and diseases and make sure that they're healthy. One risk with translocation is that they might just go back to where they, try to find their way home, since they are so family oriented. So typically you have to move the entire family if you want to have a successful relocation. So yeah, Geronimo. So helicopters and parachutes. So why not just drop them out into the mountains where there are no people and there's no risk of flooding or cutting down trees. In the 1950s, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game did that, and it was actually pretty successful. So this beaver's Geronimo. Most of the cages were designed to break when they hit the ground. Some of them didn't. The beavers would just chew their way out, so it worked pretty well for them. California Fish and Game did the same thing. So this was kind of a popular method, and it also shows that we've known for at least 70, 80 years how beneficial beavers are to our ecosystems, because they wouldn't just drop a deer into the woods. Finally, there is lethal trapping as a last resort. And for more information, you can contact Reagan Harris, our wildlife conflict specialist at Fish and Wildlife. Here's her contact information. I think she may have presented here this year or last year. So if you need to trap a fur-bearing animal, that is who you would contact. So I hope that this presentation has given you a newfound appreciation for these semi-aquatic rodents. And the next time you see one, you think about how big of an impact they've had on our nation's history and our natural environment around us. And that's all I have. So thank you. I think I have time for questions. Yes, sir.
Can you zoom on this?
What are you doing with the?
No, not you.
Yeah, I will. The question is, what am I doing with the beavers on the Spokane River? We're just letting them do their thing. We're not trapping them. We're not moving them. They're mostly found kind of downstream of town in the Bowl and Pitcher area. And they mostly build their lodges in, they build their lodges in the banks. They'll tunnel into them and burrow. They're also all over Latah or Hangman Creek. There are lots of dams around there, and yeah, but we're not actively managing them. We're just letting them do their thing. Yes. Mm-hmm. So the question is, if there's a lot of restoration work in the Little Spokane watershed, and if we're including beaver management in that, is that? Yeah, so a lot of the restoration work includes, there's a lot of it's for fish passage and wetland restoration, and it's kind of, if you build it, they will come type of situation. So we're not specifically doing anything for beavers, but and by we, I mean the organizations that are doing this work. We're just the permitting agents. But nonprofits like the Lands Council, Spokane Conservation District, they're doing a lot of this work. Spokane Tribe of Indians, some of the other tribes as well. And they're planting a lot of willows, a lot of cottonwoods, and those are beavers' favorite foods. So I guess indirectly the beavers are benefiting quite a bit. Yeah. Yes.
We had someone come in, hit the road.
Mm-hmm.
In the lake. They're dealing with the problem of the algae
Phosphorus.
blooms and whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
they did quite a lot of work up there, BDAs and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, the lands count, so the question was about a project up by Newman Lake. Trying to remember the name of the creek, Thompson Creek. So the question was just about what kind of work was going on in Thompson Creek. He had heard about just a lot of BDAs going in. So Newman Lake or Thompson Creek historically has had really high phosphorus levels, and it goes directly into Newman Lake. And this was due to a lot of grazing, a lot of cattle in the area. And so the Lands Council and Gonzaga have teamed up and engineered and built this project to put in beaver dam analogs to help basically trap some of that phosphorus and keep it out of Newman Lake. And the project's in its early stages, so there's not a ton of data, but the preliminary data is looking pretty good. There's slightly less phosphorus in Newman Lake, but as of now, it's hard to tell if that's just because of maybe less rain, less runoff. There are all kinds of factors, but the Beaver Dam analogs I think they're helping. Yeah. Yeah, in the back. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, who enforces grazing up to the banks in eastern Washington? Yeah. So we do, the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Ecology. Both, it's called an ERTS report. Anyone can submit one. It's ERTS if you see something, if you see a violation. But most of what we do it's called voluntary compliance. So we don't really have much authority to tell people what to do, but we do encourage them to keep a riparian buffer, keep wetland plants near the river, and not mow or farm all the way up to the bank. For what percentage of time does that happen? I think it depends on what part of eastern Washington. So Whitman and Lincoln County, I'd say it's lower than Spokane County, and probably the counties up north. But we would like that number to be higher for sure.
The other thing about grazing on public land, it depends on the agency that's managing the land. And that's
Yeah, so the question was, how do we get them to do something about it? There's a program called the VSP, or the Voluntary Stewardship Program. And again, it's voluntary, but there is money out there for farmers and ranchers to, if they decide to go into this program and not, give up some of their farming acreage for native plants, or fence off their stream for cattle, they can be incentivized with different, I don't know how much money it is, but there are incentives for that. There's also, they have a no-till program. They incentivize them to use less pesticides and herbicides. So there's all kinds of programs to help ag become more sustainable and environmentally friendly. Yeah.
I've got 2 or 3 questions here for the Zoomers. The first one is, there are conflicts between those wanting to restore habitat and property owners who don't want flooding on their land or roads. Do you get involved in dealing directly with resolving those situations?
The question was, oh, okay. Yeah, it's perfect, because that was a long question. Yeah, we get involved if there's flooding that is causing imminent danger to property, or any kind of crops or anything. We can issue permits for like an emergency HPA, hydraulic project approval, that will authorize the landowner to either notch or remove the beaver dam. But they'll usually rebuild them. So if it becomes a problem where it's, we've removed the dam twice and they keep rebuilding it and flooding the house, that's when we would go to that trapping or translocation. So yeah, that's kind of a last resort. But the flow devices have been pretty successful in managing flooding.
Any trapping, people trap individually or privately in this part of the state?
The question is if there are people who trap privately or individually in the state, on this part of the state. There's not, there are, but the number has gone down a lot. The pelt market it's continued to just decrease. So it's not as lucrative as it used to be. And a lot of the old time people who trapped are, getting older and retiring. It's not really a trade that younger people are taking on. So I'd say, yeah, beaver trapping is starting to decrease. And the conservation efforts, people realizing the ecological benefits of beavers is also a lot of people who are environmentally focused maybe didn't know about all those benefits. Maybe they don't want to trap beavers anymore because they know that they help with wildfire and they help with floods and droughts. So for all those reasons, it's definitely decreasing, but there are people doing it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the question is if we work with different tribes and indigenous people in the region. Do you mean with like Fish and Wildlife directly or? Yeah. So my work in Browning, Montana, I worked with the Blackfeet Nation for 2 years, and they hold beaver very, like, that's one of the most important animals for their culture. They have a ceremony called the Beaver Bundle where they I won't go too much into the details, but their creation story kind of stems from the beaver, and they have cultural significance in other tribes around the country. The work we do is mostly it's sorry, I'm blanking on the word. We're mostly just issuing the permits and making sure that work is being done lawfully and not impacting fish. But we do partner with the Spokane tribe and the Kalispel tribe quite a bit on different fish restoration projects. Yeah, on the back.
I've got another Zoomer question from Gary Lee. They want to know if there is a healthy population. If there is a healthy population in one watershed, will beaver naturally populate to a nearby watershed?
Yeah, so if they'll do one of two things. They'll either stay in one place and keep building the dam, like we saw the one that is half a mile long that can be seen from space, or they'll move once they feel like they've fulfilled their mission of flooding an area. They'll just move on to the next one. They typically move from downstream to upstream, but they typically, yeah, they'll move on and find new food and find a new place to dam, especially when those kits, so the babies are called kits. When they grow up, they'll find a mate and move somewhere else. Yep, they'll do that too. Yeah, the males will seek out a mate in nearby tributaries. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The question is what happens when we receive a problem beaver? What do you mean by a problem beaver? Um, yeah, so are they euthanized? Are they relocated? It's a case by case thing. we try not to remove any beavers or euthanize them. Sometimes it's the only option. It's like a last resort. But typically we'll try to find a place for them away from people where they can, typically in the headwaters of systems, keep that water stored up top so there's a slow trickle, and people have been pretty happy where there's beavers in the headwaters and that they have water in their stream in October. So yeah, typically in the headwaters. Yeah.
Another Zoomer question from Jeff Lambert. He's asking, what about the Liberty Lake Park beaver? He had not heard anything about that beaver lately.
Like a specific beaver, like one.
Yeah, it sounds like it's got a name, the Liberty Lake Park beaver.
I'm not familiar with him, but yeah, I'm not. I can look into it though. I'll tell Jeff to email me. Yeah.
I was traveling up 95, oh gosh, 2 weeks ago. And you don't see beaver roadkill very often, but yes, there was a dead one along the edge of the road, which is in some ways a good sign because that means they're moving out, trying to find a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good sign to see a dead beaver, but
Right.
still, just making that point, they are out there.
Yeah.
Typically stay in the area until like maybe all the young willows, the fruit is gone, or what do you think makes them do it? If they do
Yeah. So what? This fact. They typically don't have to work. I mean, some willows they'll die because of, they're not getting enough water or any human caused, the overgrazing or dredging, stuff like that. And then they'll move on. But if they have good food and they're happy, they typically will stay as long as they can. Could be years. Yeah. Yeah.
that you actually, chewing them up, once they move to the quick will go down and invent themselves and regrow.
Yeah. That's a good point. So she's referenced Ben Goldfarb's book, Eager. I think he's probably presented here. He used to live in Spokane. He wrote a really great book called Eager about the history of beavers, and a lot of the information I pulled from that book. So if you want to dive deeper, I'd recommend checking it out. But yeah, the willow cuttings will float downstream and embed themselves into the banks, and it's pretty cool. Like willows will just take. They're really easy to plant, so as long as they have water, they're happy. Jake. My favorite beaver fact. That's a good question. I think the goggles are pretty cool. Yeah, I wish I could like see underwater. Yeah, in the back.
So I've got another question from a Zoomer. The Zoomer's name is Elizabeth Collins, and she is asking specifically about if there's a tax break for inviting beavers onto the property.
Is there a tax break for inviting beavers onto the property? Not yet. Not right now. The legislative session's happening right now. I'm not sure if they're talking about it. But the nice thing about beavers is they work for free. And has anyone here ever gotten a permit to build something? Yeah, So beavers have built 1 billion dams. How many permits have they had to get? We'd have to get 1 billion, so yeah.
So beaver, the wildfire.
Hmm.
To your knowledge, does our state wildfire fighting agency, natural resource, they work with Fish and Wildlife on beaver stuff?
So the question was if DN or the Department of Natural Resources work with us on using beaver as a tool for wildfire fighting. We collaborate on a lot of, we give them technical advice on thinning projects to help with habitat and fire risk. But we don't specifically talk about putting beavers here or there. It can be hard to know where a fire is gonna be any given time, so we try to just have beavers in as many streams as we can so that when a fire does come, maybe there's a little bit of refuge for the animals to know where they're safe. Yeah.
If any of you have property and are doing any thinning projects, the construction of those beaver dam analogs is a wonderful way to get rid of all the saplings you've thinned. You don't have to burn, you don't have to haul it to the compost. And so I encourage you if you're looking for that. And then I'm going to share my favorite beaver fact is that their ears are like a periscope. So the ear canal, rather than coming out like this, goes to the top of the head so that when they're underwater or when they're in the water, their ears are up like that. It's really cool to see the skull.
That's really, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, the skulls are fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they move the beavers, if they keep track of where the beavers go, because my mom said like back when I was really young, they had requested some beavers to be moved, but she was wondering where they were and what happened.
I think I'm pretty new to the department, so I don't know. I don't really work with wildlife directly, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure they tag them at least. I don't know if they put in GPS or just like identifying tags, but yeah, I'm not sure. Oh,
Just wondering
yeah.
if you could expand. You said something about water in October. That means something, but I wasn't quite sure what you were saying or meaning.
Yeah, so can people on Zoom hear that with the microphone? Okay. Water in October, that was just a reference. Maybe I should have said August. Just referencing the fact that a lot of our streams have been drying up earlier due to climate change. And yeah, I mean, I've talked to people that live out on land and they've lived there for a long time, and they tell me that their streams used to run year round and now they go dry in August or September. And I haven't had a person with beavers tell me that. So I think that they just store that water and keep it moving a little bit slower, so it's not just rushing through and then it's gone. So yeah, I was referencing just the later season flows.
We have time for one more question.
So our last Zoomer question from Elizabeth Collins, she's asking what kind of tests are done to make sure that a translocated beaver is healthy?
They'll mostly just test for diseases and make sure they don't have any parasites or fungi, or Giardia is the main one. And if they do, they're put down, they're removed from the ecosystem. So yeah, they just test for diseases.
Thank you so much, Jacob. we'd like to give you one of our calendars.
Ooh, thank you.
I also want to mention too, we all should be leaving through that door. And if you need the bathroom, it's through that hallway there. So thanks for coming.
Number, thank